Hello, welcome back. So today is a recent reads, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much to say in this intro because if I talk too much about how many books or other things, I might give things away. But as you can see from the title, I did read a certain very popular series, but I can't say much more than that. So let's get into it. So the first book I read was Real Not Perfect by Stephanie Coleman. So this book follows Tessa. She's a teenage girl living in Riverbend, Indiana, and life seems to be going well. She's got two loving parents, great friends. Things are going pretty well, but then a bomb gets dropped that her parents are getting divorced because her dad has been unfaithful. So, as a result of that, understandably, she's very mad at her dad, and her mom is not doing well. But then, to make matters worse, she accidentally gets put in drama class when she meant to take this other class. So yeah, lots of stuff going on, but she's just trying to pretend that everything is fine. So, I don't know if it was because I needed a book like this after reading Growing Up Duggar, or if this book is just a great book. But I love this! I did not expect a book like this to start up the reading year with a 4.5 stars, although that is probably never going to happen again. So yes, and is it perfect? No. Is it perfectly well written? I mean, that's debatable, but while I was reading, I didn't seem to think so. But again, I love this. Now, rather than just saying I love this over and over again, let's talk about why I love this. So the first thing I love is I thought like the story was pretty well done. I mean the social media thread throughout it of like how things on social media aren't real. That's kind of a common thing people say, but I think the way it was done and with the other stories, I think that story was done well. And then I also really liked the drama element. Even though Tessa does not really like drama, it was fun to see her. It was fun to see her get involved with that and stuff. And then there's also throughout this book just little things mentioned, like certain comments here and there that I appreciated. I can't recall some of them right now, but I appreciated that. And then also I loved Izzy and Amelia's characters. So this might sound a little mean, but they're the kind of characters to where in real life they'd be annoying, but as book characters you absolutely love them. I don't know how much of a common thing that is for other people, but that certainly seems to be a thing with me. Now, there was a few things that I didn't love at first, but then as I thought about more, I was like, okay, well that actually kind of makes sense. So this is a part of the series called Riverbend Friends. So in this, yeah, so the Riverbend Friends are Tessa, Izzy, Amelia, and Shay, and we meet all of them in this book. And I wasn't sure about that because it reminded me of when Melody Carlson tried to cram all the Carter House girls into that one book. But the more I thought about it, it actually makes more sense in this case because the series is called Riverbend Friends, so it makes sense that we'd meet all the Riverbend Friends in this first book. So whereas with that Melody Carlson book, that wasn't a Carter House Girls book. It was just another series that she wanted to include them in, and that just also didn't work. Another thing that I wasn't sure about was so Tessa is kind of there's like some lessons that she has to learn, and there's a few times where people have talked to her about what she needs to do, but then after that it seemed like she didn't learn. And at first I was like, okay, well, what's up with that? But then I realized, no, that probably does make sense. That's probably more realistic. Yeah, there's even some things I wasn't sure about. They still made sense. Although there were a few comments that I didn't care for. Yeah, but that's basically everything. So, with how much I love this first book, I'm going to definitely continue on with the rest of the series. The only thing I'm a little worried about is that this is a multi-authored series, and I've heard that with multi-authored series that like follow the same characters, there can be differences in the characters. So yeah, but it seems like from what I can tell on Goodreads, like the the authors change depending on who is the main character, so like each author gets a different character. So yes, I'm obviously looking forward to Izzy and Amelia's books, but it seems like the next book is gonna be about Shay, which I liked her but didn't care for her as much, but I'm still very intrigued by her story. So there's that. And there wasn't really any content problems with this book. I mean, obviously, there's talk, there's an affair, so there's talk of that, and then I didn't realize this until I looked back at the review, but there is mention of the sex talk, but I didn't even remember that until I read that review, so it must have been like just a brief mention of it. So I started this year wondering if Christian contemporary YA can also be really good, and I think I've already found my answer. Alright, so as you can tell from the title, this book I've read, yeah. So a good amount of the books that we're going to talk about next is going to be from the Chronicles of Narnia series, which is a very popular series, and I guess, kind of grow up with it. So when I was younger, I read all of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and then I started Magician's Nephew, Prince with Prince Caspian and Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I'm not sure if I started those or if I just read parts of those, and I'm not sure which, if I did or one or the other. And then I also started The Silver Chair. So you can tell from that the only ones that I didn't touch at all were The Horse and His Boy and The Last Battle. So yeah, and also I mainly grew up and was used to the chronological order. I didn't even know about the publication order until I looked on Goodreads. So yeah, so from what I read in the chronological order. So of course, with chronological order, I started with The Magician's Nephew. So obviously this book is about the founding of Narnia and all of these things. So with this one, the story was somewhat interesting. We might talk a little bit about some of that later, but the writing style was not as into, wasn't really working as much for me. And also, this was not a pleasant reading experience because this book was literally falling apart as I was trying to read it. So, yeah, I don't know if I can demonstrate much of that. So, and so on the story of this one, this made me wonder if, like, maybe for this series, the chronological order is not the way to go. I mean, I feel like if you're already somewhat familiar with the Narnia, you could start with this one. But if you know like absolutely nothing about this series, this one might not be a good one to start with just because you might not care about anything that's happening. So, well, maybe that won't be the case. So, I mean, I guess you can maybe discuss that in the comments or something. So, yeah. And then next, I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So, of course, this is a little copy, like that goes with the other books. But who wants to read a little copy like this when you can read the hardcover movie edition or whatever? Now, interestingly enough, it seems like from observing the bookish space, it seems there's a good amount of people who don't like hardcovers, which I kind of understand that, but also, like, I'll just read a book in whatever way, whether it's hardcovers, paperbacks, ebooks, as long as the book is not literally falling apart. I'm good. So, obviously, this story, I'm sure most people know the story, but to give a brief little synopsis, these four kids who get sent to live with this professor, the youngest girl finds this wardrobe and she finds this magical land. Yeah. So, one thing I appreciate about this one was that the events that we're familiar with kind of happen just one after the other. There's not really any like filler, I guess. So yeah, there's that. It's obviously the most famous one for a reason, but I'm still not sure about my rating for this book. So the previous book, Magician's Nephew, I gave 3 stars, and this one I gave 4 stars. And now I'm wondering if that was a little bit too much because while I enjoyed it more than Magician's Nephew, I don't think I enjoyed it that much more. So maybe 3.5 would be better. Yeah, and then in terms of content, I mean, children's book from back in the day can't be that crazy. Oh, also, I didn't say anything about content of Magician's Nephew. I don't think there was anything with that one. This one, I think the only thing, and I noted this in my review, there was a line where talking about like the evil creatures that that are with the witch, and he said something about like, oh, and if I were to describe these creatures, the grown-ups would not let you read this book. So it's just I'm not exactly sure what that means, so just, I guess, to keep that in mind. And then, next I read The Horse and His Boy. So, I think I can somewhat describe the plot of this one. So, this book follows Shasta. He lives in kind of in Narnia's world, but in a different country. So, he lives there. He lives with this fisherman who doesn't treat him well. At the beginning of the story, this like high-ranking official comes along and offers to buy Shasta as a slave. And so Shasta's like somewhat fine with it. But then he discovers this official's horse. He's a talking horse, and the horse tells him like, "Hey, you don't want to be sold to my master. He's not a good guy." And then he says, "Hey, there's this place called Narnia. Let's try to escape to that." And so they go along. They go along trying to escape, and coming. They end up escaping with this other girl who is escaping an arranged marriage. And then while Shasta's on the run, he discovers a plot against Narnia. So yeah, there's that. So before reading this book, I came across this song called Shasta's Complaint by Sarah Sparks. And I really liked that song, but I knew it was part of this like Narnia album, so I was like, oh, I wonder who Shasta is, because of course I never touched this book, and of course that's the main character of this book. And so I was like, oh, it would be interesting. And then I don't think you need to read this book to really appreciate that song more. In fact, like I think like the last section of the song, which is one of my favorite parts, is like just pretty much copied from a part of this book. So, well, not exactly copied. Some words are changed, but still. So yeah, there's that. I still like the song. Still, you know. So, and again, it was the case again where it's like the story was somewhat interesting. I guess more interesting than I would have thought. Because I think the reason why I didn't touch this book when I was younger is I thought the story would be boring. But yeah, the story's somewhat interesting, but again, the writing style is just not working for me. So like, and this is interesting because this is like a children's series. So I've been kind of feeling like reading it. I was like, am I dumber than children from back in the day? So is that like I understood like most of what was happening, but then there were times where I was like, wait, what just what's happening right now? So yeah, there's that. I liked Aravis's Aravis character, but nothing else to note about. So it was while reading this book that I came to a realization because with reading this series, my mentality was always like, okay, just get through this series and then you can move on to other books that you want to read. But then I realized while reading this book, especially with the writing style not really working for me, I was like, why am I forcing myself to read these books instead of just reading the books that I actually want to read that are up next in my TBR? So then I came to a decision. I was like, okay, I'll finish this book and then I'll start the next book. And then whether I finish that one or temporarily put it down. And after that will be when I'm done with this series for now. So yeah, that's what happened. So with content of this one, towards the end, they use the A word to refer to a donkey, so keep that in mind. So, yeah. Okay, so the next book in the Narnia series is, of course, Prince Caspian. So, in order to not give spoilers for Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe, which, I mean, I imagine most people already know, but just in case, I'm not gonna really describe the plot of this one. And I don't really have much to say on it. The only thing that I really noted about this book was how different the movie is from this book. And I understand that when you're going from one medium to another, there are some things that have to change. But I don't remember the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe movie being as different from the book as the Prince Caspian movie is from this book. So, yeah, there's that. And then, just the content, the A word is used again towards the end, but this time it doesn't seem to be referring to a donkey. So, take that as you will. Alright, so, the last book of this video. So, there was the book that I planned to read after Narnia anyways, but then another book came in, a Libby Holt came in, and so I had to kind of decide between these two because I'd only had time to finish one before I had to pick this video. So I started reading both, and I liked both of them. So yeah, I liked both of them, but the one I decided to go with was Unearth the Tides by, let me see if I can pronounce this right, Alissa J. Zavalianos? Is that how we pronounce it? I don't know. So how I got this book was there was an ebook sale for this author's books, and I picked this one because whenever I see an ebook sale, I always got to take advantage of it. Can you tell I don't have Kindle Unlimited? So yeah, I picked up this one. So this book follows Huxley. He is essentially the bodyguard to one of the princes of this kingdom, and then this prince that he was supposed to be in charge of is killed, and Huxley is he's framed for the murder. And so he has to escape, so he escapes with his friend. They set out on sea, but then they get attacked by this seemingly sea monster. But then they wake up in this strange place, this strange underwater sea thing. And that's where our story begins. So this book is actually a retelling of the classic book 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. And I'm not familiar with that book at all, so I can't really speak to how this is as a retelling, but from the reviews that I've seen, it seems like some people who have read the original book prefer this one, and I feel like I would be included in that, considering my luck with classics. So, because I gotta say, this book, like, out of all of the fantasy books I've read, this is definitely the one I've enjoyed the most. Like, right from the prologue, I was intrigued. So, definitely gonna have to check out more books by this author. I will say, there's also, because I enjoyed this book, but there's also some times where there was some anxiety there. So, the first time I had that was I remember reading the reviews about there was that reading from the reviews that there was some kind of romance, and a female character isn't introduced until, I mean, I guess not that far into the book, like 20 to 30% through the book. So at first, so there was a time where I thought there would be a same-sex romance, which that was kind of stupid of me to worry about. Yeah, because this is a Christian fantasy book, and yes, while there are some affirming Christians, it seems like they're not that common in the Christian fiction world. I mean, I guess I haven't read that many current Christian fiction, but from the one I had, there's not really that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's that. But once that was resolved, towards the end, like, I knew some twists were coming, but I wasn't sure what the twists were gonna be, so there was anxiety about what those twists would be. So, but yeah, it all worked out pretty well. So yeah, in terms of content, the romance, there is the romance, but it's pretty light, so there's not much content to note. There is mention of brothels, but not what brothels are, so I guess there's that. I guess the main content to be concerned is that there is some like violent things talked about, like there's talk of people being poisoned, and then there's other things like that. So yeah, don't really know what else to say. So that is all for this video. I feel a little bad because like this, if I've titled this video the way I wanted to, it suggests that this video was mostly Narnia, which there are more Narnia books, but I didn't spend as much time talking about them as I did the other books. So, but hopefully you still enjoyed this. That is all.